I've got a very important question to ask you. What could we possibly achieve by spending 2 hours on something that we could spend 1 hour on? Why should it be that if I spend 2 hours on doing it, it's better than if I spend 1 hour on doing it? What is it all for? Why are we doing it? So I'm going to suggest some answers to that. Why do we do the Seder? And I'm going to give you some answers, and we're going to then explore different methods of dealing with it. So, B'chol dor v'dor, in each and every generation, chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. Every person must view himself as if he personally came out of Egypt, as it says, and this is a pasuk from Shmot. It's in Perikut Gimel, chapter 13, verse 8. V'higadata levincha bayom hahu lemor. Ba'avur ze asa Hashem li v'tzeiti miMitzrayim. And you should tell your child on that day as follows: because of this, did God do this for me? He took me out of Egypt. So that's an incredible idea, that God didn't take somebody else out of Egypt. He didn't take some historical group out of Egypt. He took me out of Egypt. And this point is also in the second source which I brought here on my little source sheet. לא את אבותינו בלבד גאל הקדוש ברוך הוא. It was not just our ancestors whom God redeemed from Egypt. אלא אף אותנו גאל עמהם. He also redeemed us. Somehow, this thing that happened 3,500 years ago is not a historic event. It's me. It's happening to me now, today. שנאמר, ואותנו הוציא משם. He took us out of there, למען הביא אותנו לתת לנו את הארץ אשר נשבע לאבותינו. In order that we could get the land, there's going to be some glorious future. And for that reason alone, he took us out of Egypt. Us, you, me, all of us, out of Egypt. Hey, 1 second. Aren't we in Beverly Hills? I think we're in Beverly Hills. I don't think we are in Egypt. I don't think that any of you came out of Egypt. So what is this meant to mean? What is indicated by this concept is that somehow the focus of the Seder is not intellectual. As much as we talk about intellectual stuff at the Seder, actually, however intellectual we may make the Seder, the whole focus of the Seder isn't intellectual, it's experiential. It's what you're experiencing on the night. There's something which we're meant to be relating to, that something's meant to be happening to us. It's an experience. A person must view himself or herself as if he came out of Egypt. What does it imply for us? And what practical methods can we use to achieve this objective, which seems to be the central theme of Satan? I would like to suggest that there are only 2 clear answers to this question. Okay, so the first method, which we're all very, very familiar with, is let's get into these people's shoes. Okay? What do I mean by that? Relive the past. Let's relive, let's imagine that we were slaves in Egypt, and that we were being beaten by taskmasters. We experienced harsh slavery, we emerged triumphant. And in that there is freedom, and that's how we can relive that experience. Here, the aim in such a scenario, the aim is to simulate the past and give each and every Jew a taste of the Exodus itself. That's really the Seder experience that I think all of us are very familiar with. That is answer number 1. 2, the second answer, is to create a contemporary Exodus experience for ourselves. But how about bringing that Egypt into the year 2014? Bringing that Exodus moment into the year 2014. In this model, the Exodus is applied to a contemporary reality, so that we can ask the questions of the Exodus about our world today. That the past travels forward. Us going back, or the past coming to us, is not a cosmetic difference. I'll explain to you what I mean. They do radically alter the type of discussions we would have at the Seder. Let's take a look. Should we talk about the notion of Jewish peoplehood then? What does it mean to be a Jew in ancient Egypt? Or should we talk about what it means to be the Jewish people in the year 2014? Because suddenly, the whole concept of Exodus, the whole concept of redemption opens up in our mind the concept of being a Jewish nation. So the very fact that we have to discuss what happened then will make us think about what happens now, what it means to us now. Or perhaps we should focus on what enslaves us now. Perhaps we should focus on, I don't know, technology. Maybe we should focus on cultural peer pressure. Maybe we should focus on the values that impede on our lives, which are antithetical to the Torah that we were given very shortly after the Exodus. Maybe that's our slavery. Maybe the fact that we're talking about slavery then, and slavery affected us so much and we needed to be redeemed from it, should open us up to the fact that we too need to be redeemed from slavery. And our experience at the Seder would be to translate the experience of the Bnei Israel then to the reality of our lives today. Because we are not being beaten by Egyptian taskmasters. Is the question whether the Israelites were headed for Har Sinai? Or is it whether we are today as Jews oriented towards the Torah that was given at Har Sinai? Quite different. It's not cosmetic. In essence, are we to read the past in the light of the present, or are we to read the present in the light of the past? That will really give us some meaning in terms of viewing ourselves as if we came out of Egypt. Let's be honest. The way we were all brought up, those of us who were brought up keeping a Seder, was that the Seder was a ritual event during which we primarily dwelt in the past. I'm going to see what the concept of time means in the sense of the Haggadah, and I'm going to point you to source number 3, still on page 1. The 3 most important things that you have to talk about at the Seder. Rabbi Gamliel Haya Omer. Rabbi Gamliel used to say, Kol shelo omar shlosha dvarim elu b'Pesach. Anyone who didn't say these 3 things during the course of his Seder, lo yatsa yedei chovato, did not discharge, did not fulfill his duty. What are they? Pesach. Al shum shepasach hakadosh baruch hu abatei avotenu b'Mitzrayim. The Lord passed over our forefathers' homes. Right? That's what he did. Okay. Matzah, because the redemption came so fast there was no time for bread to rise. Maror, because the Egyptians made our forefathers' lives bitter. Let's look at these 3 things in terms of time. Okay? Let's think about them in terms of time. So, what is the relationship between Pesach, Matzah, and Maror from the vantage point of our discussion regarding time? Maror, what does Maror represent? Slavery, it's the past, right? It's the past. We were slaves. So Maror is that horrible past that we need to refer to. What does Matzah represent? Matzah represents redemption, right? The future. We came out, we had to rush out of Egypt. It's redemption. So what does Pesach represent? What is Pesach? Pesach, the common Pesach, is it the past? They were in Egypt when they did it? Is it the future? No, not really. What is it? What does it represent? Why would we need 2 symbols of the same thing? If Matzah is the future and Maror is the past, well, we've got our symbols. What do we need a 3rd symbol for? Why do we need a 3rd symbol? So perhaps, let me suggest that Pesach is neither the past nor the future. It's the present. It's right now. It's that freeze frame moment. It's that exact point, that split second of redemption, when we turned from being slaves into being freed people. At that exact moment, that was when we became the Jewish people. God leaped over our homes. It was the moment when our fate and the fate of every inhabitant of Egypt was determined. Pesach will always symbolize that charged moment when the clock struck midnight And God expressed his power over Egypt, changing the fate of Jewish history forever. From exile to redemption. It's a split second in time. Everyone has, in their memory, in their life experience, has had a freeze frame moment. A vayehi b'chatzos halayla moment, right? We've all had it. Like, before that time, before I met that person, I was this. After I met that person, I was that. The meeting was the vayehi b'chatzos halayla. Before that happened, I was one thing. Afterwards, I was something else completely. It was a life-changing moment. Right? Vayehi b'chatzos halayla. That's what Pesach represents. So, we're shifting from one paradigm to another, and in that split second, that's when it happened. I'm now going to quote, and I've actually reproduced the whole quote here in your source sheet. It's worth taking home, and I would encourage you to read this quote at your seder, if you're able to. It's about time consciousness. Quantitative time versus qualitative time. Listen carefully. This is from Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, who was, of course, from Yeshiva University, a very, very great Talmudic scholar. There are some people who live in quantitative dead time. They measure time by the clock. They're always looking at their watches and by the calendar. For them, there is no merger of the past and the future. The present itself is a lost moment. A year is endless. These people are deprived of historical consciousness, for history is the living experience of time. The man, however, who lives in qualitative time has a different criterion of the experience of time than the quantitative experience. He measures time not by the length extension, but by pure quality, creativity, and accomplishment. While for the man with a quantitative apprehension, all fractions of time are equal, for the man of a qualitative apprehension, there is no equality among temporal fractions of time. Moments are heterogeneous. One may live an entire lifespan quantitatively, not having lived even a moment qualitatively experienced. And one may have lived a single moment, one single moment quantitatively, and have lived through an eternity qualitatively. The alternative is up to man himself. A slave, an eved, has no time consciousness of his own, for he has no time of his own. His awareness of full intuition of the qualitative moment is alien to him. The basic criterion that distinguishes free men from slaves is the kind of relationship one has with time and its experience. A slave who is capable of appreciating each day, of grasping its meaning and its worth, of weaving every thread of time into a glorious fabric, quantitatively forming the warp and the woof of centuries of change. It's that type of person who is eligible for Torah. He has achieved freedom. That's real freedom. Take time and turn it into something meaningful. That's achieving freedom. That's real. God sets Shabbat in place, and it's been in the same place every week since creation, since the very first Shabbat. But Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, is active in creating Kedushat Hazman, in creating the very sanctity that is Yom Tov. Am Yisrael is intimately connected to Kedushat Yom Tov. And in the same way that the laws of Pesach commenced with independent Jewish time, similarly our celebration of our independence, the Seder, commences with that very notion. We don't stick Kiddush somewhere, we don't bury it somewhere later on in the Seder. No, Kiddush is the essence of what Pesach is all about. We took control of our time. What better way of demonstrating that by making Kiddush and shouting at the top of our voices, Mekadesh Yisrael B'Hazmanim. That's who we are. We took control of our time. So this year when we sit down and we say in our Haggadah, B'chol dor v'dor, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. It can be you who comes out of Egypt. It can be you who emerges into freedom. it can be you who takes the Seder experience and takes control of your time and becomes a Jew who's experienced Yetziat Mitzrayim. Thank you.